Today I have a 2015 Chevrolet Tahoe. The air conditioner is not cooling on this vehicle, and after connecting my gauges, I did notice that the system was low on refrigerant, and at this time I did connect a refrigerant bottle to it and add just a small amount of refrigerant to get the pressure up just a little bit. You can see these gauges right now, they're showing about 60 pounds in the system of pressure. And I went and looked all around the compressor and all the lines under the dash, under the hood, all the way up to the dash. And using an electronic leak detector like this one, I could not find any leaks under the hood. So at this time, I moved around to the back of the vehicle because this system does have a rear air conditioner, and that's where I noticed we had a problem. On the passenger side, at the rear of the vehicle, you have, just above the muffler, you have your air conditioner lines. It's kind of hard for me to hold my phone. This big line here is your low pressure line or return line going back to the compressor. This is your high pressure line. This is the one that delivers the liquid high pressure refrigerant to the expansion valve, which is what these two lines go up into. Just on the other side of these lines, you have two more hoses here, one here and one here, and these are your heater hoses. They have the actual coolant from the engine that runs through them into the heater core, which is all mounted in the evaporator housing at the rear of the vehicle. Now, if you'll notice, right up here at this expansion valve, the first sign that we might have a problem is the amount of dust and dirt that has accumulated on this valve. There will be a little bit of dirt and dust back here in the back because of the rear tire. But the first sign that you might have an issue on a leak with refrigerant is as refrigerant passes through the system, there's a small amount of oil that moves with it. And if refrigerant ever leaks out of the system, the oil will leak out at the same time and dirt and dust will start to accumulate. So you can see this expansion valve, this thing is pretty well covered up in dirt. And it looks a little oily even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my leak detector and I'm going to slide it up in position here, and I'm going to turn it on, and we're going to see if we can pick up any sounds in here of any refrigerant problems. And you can see that we're starting to pick up some refrigerant. So this leak detector actually picked up some trace amounts of refrigerant that are leaking out, and they're not leaking. It's not a big leak at the moment because the pressure is down in the system, but there is definitely a problem right here. So we're going to get in here and try to clean this thing off and see if we can see if it's a gasket problem with the expansion valve, or maybe possibly have to move up further into the evaporator housing. So we're going to do that at this time. The next thing that I did is I cleaned the dirt and oil off of the air conditioner hoses themselves that went into this expansion valve. This is a block type expansion valve, and the hoses actually mount onto this stud right here. It's a 13 millimeter nut that actually holds the lines on. I took the nut off, removed the lines, and then what actually holds the expansion valve to the evaporator are these two bolts. Now these things are a 3 millimeter Allen head bolt. So you'll probably don't have a 3mm Allen head laying around, so you probably have to go pick one up at a local parts store. But there's one here and one that goes right here. So you take these out, and then I just grab the stud and pull this block type valve away from the evaporator itself. Still got a little dirt and stuff on it. So the next thing that I did was I brought a UV light over to the valve itself, and you can see when the UV light hits the valve, you start to pick up some yellow dye. The dye is on the end over here. There's also, try to move my light around where you can see it, there's some dye in behind this power head. This piece on the end right here is called the power head, and so there's a lot of dye in there, and there's some dye on the sides right here. There's a little gasket that runs across here, but if you notice, there's no dye above this line. And just in thinking about it, if your evaporator was leaking, you would definitely have dye on both sides of that gasket, probably more so in here than down here. But since this is on the bottom, I'm going to suspect that this valve is leaking possibly around this power head or at the rear. So what I'm going to do at this time is we're going to replace this expansion valve with a brand new one. This is the bottom of the evaporator, and I'm going to take a hook tool or anything that you can come up in here, and you'll see there's a gasket right here, and you just got to reach up in here and pull down on it. It'll fall out and hit you in the face, just like that one did me. There's another gasket right here, and I'm trying to do this where you can kind of see what I'm trying to do here, and not very successful while I'm holding this phone. So I'm going to put my phone down and remove that gasket, and then we're going to go match them up with the new gaskets and slip them right back on to these two tubes here. Here is the bottom of the evaporator with the new gaskets on it. If you also notice, there's this plate up here, it'll move around a little bit. So if it slides back like this, you might want to take your tool and just kind of push it back up in position, because those bolts on the bottom of that expansion valve will have to line up on that plate to actually bolt it back up to the evaporator core. So you know, just have to be real careful putting the valve back in there and try not to move the plate. If you do, you will have to reach in there a couple of times and fish it back around until you can get the bolts lined back up. Here I have the lines, and the new expansion valve is in the evaporator, and the lines are connected back up and with the new gaskets, and I'm now evacuating the system, and we're going to check and see if we got any leaks. I've been evacuating the system for about 30 minutes. This is the suction side. It's showing below 30 inches of vacuum. This is analog gauge, so it's not entirely super accurate, but it is accurate enough for me to note if I have any leaks in the system. So now I'm going to close these valves off on the low and the high side, and I'm going to let it sit for a little while, and I'm going to see if I get any rise in suction, especially on this low side. The high side you really can't tell that much because the gauge reads in higher increments. This low side I'll really be able to know just by watching to see if I get any movement on the needle on this gauge. Okay, we're at about 40 minutes now with the vacuum pump shut down, and our low side or suction side gauge is still in the exact same spot that it was in when I shut it down. So I'm going to wait about another 20 minutes or so, and everything holding true, then we're going to charge the system up and check the operation of the air conditioner. Okay, I've waited about another 30 minutes and coming over here, taking a look again. The vacuum is still holding good, so now we're going to charge the refrigerant back into the system. Here is the data sticker under the hood. 134A refrigerant in the SUV is 0.92 kilograms, so that's 2.024 pounds. So now we're going to charge the system with the correct amount of refrigerant. In order to put the correct amount of refrigerant back into the system, I'm using a refrigerant scale. I take my refrigerant bottle, set it on the scale. After I turn the scale on, you come over here and with the bottle sitting on it, I set it to 0. This thing will do kilograms or pounds. I'm going to do this in pounds. The next thing I do is open the valve up on the bottom of the tank, or it's on the top of the tank. When it's upside down, it's on the bottom. And then I came up here and I just loosened this yellow line just a little bit, just to let a little bit of refrigerant come through there to get any air out of this line. If you don't do that, you will introduce a small amount of air into the system. These red and blue lines here going to the low side and high side of the system, they are still under vacuum, so you don't have to worry about them. And now we're ready to recharge. And we're going to do 2.02. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my high side and I'm going to put as much in as a liquid. And how I'm doing this is with the tank upside down, I'm putting liquid into the high side with the engine off. You never charge a system on the high side with the engine running and the air conditioner on, because you can cause an explosion because of too much pressure going back into the tank. So at this time, I'm going to open this valve up, and you can see liquid refrigerant bubbling in the sight glass there. I'm going to come over here and look at my gauge. Right now, refrigerant is going into the system, and we want to stop it at 2.02, and this thing won't charge 2.02 in a static system. So we're going to let it charge what it will with everything switched off, and then we will crank the vehicle up and turn the air conditioner on, and at that time we will slowly add it in on the low side until the system is full of refrigerant. Now I have the vehicle running and the air conditioner on. I want to just slowly open this low side valve up, so we're letting a small amount of refrigerant in at the time. I want to come over here and watch my scale, and what I'm looking for is 2.02. So I'm just opening the valve ever so slightly. Little bit more refrigerant in there. Don't want to overcharge the system. These systems don't hold very much, and so an overcharge will create a condition where you won't be cooling as well. So we're getting really close. We're going to stop it right there. We're showing 2. We're going to just crack the valve a little bit. And we're going to stop it there. So right now we're at 2.02. So our system is charged to the factory recommendation. After removing the gauges from the vehicle, I finished putting the tire back on the rear of the vehicle, and I cranked it up again, drove it down the road. Once again, it's gotten dark on me before I finished, but everything is working fine, and the vehicle is cooling properly front and rear. So this concludes my video on the 2015 Chevrolet Tahoe diagnosis and repair of the refrigerant leak. Thanks for watching.